Good evening and welcome to the Community Development Committee meeting for May 2021. I'd like to gavel this meeting to order and ask that the roll be called.
Dan Hansen.
Here.
Ed Schochner. Present. Scott Counter.
Present.
Sean Anderson.
Present.
Judy Achterhoff. Excused.
All right. Does anybody have any changes they'd like to see made to the minutes? If there are none, we will have them stand approved. At this point, we have public comment, and I'd like to, if anybody has public comment other than regarding the rezoning, then we would ask them to come up to the podium and make public comment. However, if you're here to talk about the rezoning, please wait until the public hearing, which is coming up next, and then we'll have you talk during the public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to make public comment on anything on or off the agenda other than the rezoning in Kinnickinnick? And just for the kicks, one more time, is there anybody who'd like to make public comment about anything on or off the agenda other than the rezoning in Kinnickinnick? Very good. Here ends public comment. I'd like to begin the public hearing by asking for a staff report, and we would ask John to come on up to the podium.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. The first item on your agenda tonight is a public hearing for a rezoning request in the town of Kinnickinnick. The property owners are Paul and Sandra Lubick and Kevin Lubick, and the applicant agent is Jason Hawes. The site address of the property is at 517 County Road SS. Not that I see. Okay. Okay. I'll bend down.
Thanks for your patience, everyone, while we work on our audio.
Is that better? Okay. Again, just mentioned earlier, the site address is 517 County Road SS in the town of Kinnickinnick. And the request is to go from an R2 residential district to an R1 residential district with a non-metallic mining overlay. The subject property is about 116 acres, and we'll get to some of the aerial photos in just a minute. One important aspect that everybody needs to be aware of tonight, that specifically the rezoning application request will be evaluated for the following. Some of the main criteria will be the consistency with standards, goals, and objectives for the comprehensive plans for both the town of Kinnickinnick and the St. Croix County. A comprehensive plan is a document designed to guide future actions of a county, city, or town. A typical plan consists of long-range goals and maps that portray the future vision of that particular jurisdiction. The plan document provides a guide in making decisions, such as the decisions that the committee will be considering tonight, in particular the rezoning. We'll also do a quick review of the compatibility of adjoining land uses and take a look at the review of impacts of related infrastructure. Again, the rezoning application does not approve or disapprove a non-metallic mining operation. This would be a separate public hearing through a conditional use permit process should the rezoning be approved. At that point, the conditional use permit would address specific operational and reclamation issues consistent with a separate chapter in St. Croix County Code, Chapter 14, Nonmetallic Mining. A little bit of a geographical overview of the site, 517 County Road SS. The subject property highlighted in blue, the 116 acres, currently has access off of County Road SS. On the west edge of the property, County Road N to the north, and some of the major roads, we have Tower Road and Coulee Road running east and west. And then we have a couple subdivisions that would abut the property on the southeast and northeast part of the site. And then we do have scattered home and farm sites up and down County Road SS. And then this next picture just shows the visual context of the property. Again, Rudy Drive, I believe we have Sleepy Hollow Drive to the southeast, and then County Road SS running west of the site. And then you see the existing layout of the farmstead. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the zoning and general features of the property. Based on the official St. Croix County zoning map for the town of Kinnickinnic, the subject parcels outlined in red below on the map here are currently zoned R1. The requested R1 zoning allows all agricultural uses with a limited residential development density of 1 unit per 10 acres. Non-metallic minings are listed as a conditional use in the R1 district, which is what the request is for. In comparison, the existing R2 district allows most agricultural uses and residential development of 2-acre lots without density limits. So again, the R2 zoning would allow a little bit more denser residential development. The R2 district does not allow non-metallic mining uses. During the recent completion of the comprehensive zoning revision that the county undertook in 2017, adopted in 2019, the town of Kinnickinnic opted to zone most of the town as R2 residential. And you can kind of see by the zoning map here, the boundary line between the town of Warren and Kinnickinnic is right at this location. Everything south is within the town of Kinnickinnic. We have I-94 in the red line, and then this is all the southerly portion of the town of Warren. So again, the zoning map depicts the R2 zoned areas. In reviewing adjacent and area-wide zoning, the rezoning of the subject parcel to R1 would be opposite of some of the existing current zoning patterns that we see on the map. And then as we talked about earlier on some of the aerial photos, the adjacent land uses include 2 residential subdivisions and then some scattered home and farm sites along County Road SS along with the farming operations and farm fields. One of the key components that a county must look at in making zoning decisions is making sure that the rezoning of land would be consistent with the local government unit's comprehensive plan. And that's dictated by state statute 66.1001(3G). So the following slides, we're just going to review some of the comprehensive plan statements and maps of both the town of Kinnickinnic and St. Croix County. So currently in the town of Kinnickinnic comprehensive plan, they designate this general area, which you see by the orange arrow, as agricultural residential. And as we continue to go on, the town of Kinnickinnic language summary on the ag residential land uses states that this designation is predominantly created to establish areas where agricultural uses, commercial uses serving agriculture, limited commercial, institutional, and residential uses can be located. The second thing we look at is what the town vision is within the comprehensive plan. So on page 5 of the town plan document, I'll just go through these quickly. The town desires wall plan development that respects the town's rural historic character, protect environmentally sensitive areas while allowing for a variety of residential and commercial growth. Number 3, wall plan growth must protect economic interest and property owner rights. And 4, the planning process for the town will be open and consistent at all times. We then review the plan for other specific goals that we believe pertain to the application request. So under the economic development policies, it states that new business or industrial development should not represent a nuisance to other landowners. Sites and projects shall be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. When they talk about land use, they discuss ensuring that development occurs in an orderly process and includes sufficient infrastructure for fire protection and roads. Land use, talking about the decisions will protect economic interest and property rights. Transportation states that maintain the safety of town transportation systems. And then as we get to the land use, some of the more specific goals in the town plan talk about the town acknowledging that they will be increasingly residential in nature with agricultural uses decreasing. And then that kind of culminates in a land use goal based on their town vision that industrial development is incompatible with the town's vision statement. Next, we'll take a close look at the St. Croix County Comprehensive Plan. Currently, the St. Croix County Comprehensive Plan designates this property for mixed rural agriculture. And specifically, the definition of that designation seeks to preserve agricultural lands while allowing more residential development than is allowed in the ag area, protect existing farm and forestry operations from encroachment by incompatible uses, promote further investments in farming, preserve wildlife habitat and open space, and preserve the rural character of the area. As mapped, this designation includes farmland, open lands, woodlands, ag-related uses, cottage industries, limited low-density residential development, and mineral extraction operations. These type of development shall be located in order to minimize the fragmentation of productive ag land and to minimize disruption to existing uses. So again, those are just snippets of each of the comprehensive plans, the land use designations, and what they mean to each jurisdiction. Next, we'll take a closer look at the natural resource features. Again, on these maps, you'll see the property highlighted in blue. And currently, the property does not contain any waterfowl protection areas, prairie remnant sites, sensitive areas, or scenic recreational areas. We do have some areas at the southwest side of the site that is included in the environmental corridor and does correspond to some general tree lines and some intermittent streams that run through the site that are shown in the faded blue line. Continuing with the natural features, we noted that the parcels do not contain any closed depression areas or any lands in shoreland, wetland, or floodplain categories. The parcels do contain some scattered areas identified as containing limited soils for septic system construction. Again, as noted, 2 intermittent streams kind of in the southwest corner of the site, and these intermittent streams channel runoff, generally speaking, from north to south through the site. Drainage and stormwater plans would be required for any development or mining activities on the site if it should proceed to that point. Next, we take a look at the surface use categories, and based on our mapping, the parcels are mostly considered productive farmland. There are a couple of pockets of slopes on the southwest portion of the site in the 12 to 20% category. If development would occur, Chapter 15 establishes grading and land disturbance standards and requires for permit submittals. Another part of our application process is we do ask other entities to review the application. As with all rezoning requests, the applications are sent to the respective town to see if they have any comments or insight to provide. And as of today, the town of Kinnick did not provide any comments on the application. Because it's a rezoning, we do submit these applications to our highway commissioner for appropriate review in anticipation of any development if it should get to that point. And Robbie Croix, our highway commissioner, did provide some comments stating that County Road SS, County N are not designed to be designated heavy truck routes. So if it got to the conditional use permit stage, there would likely be a traffic impact analysis that would be required to analyze the site, the trips, the number of trips per day coming in and off the site, and whether or not there would be any improvements that would be needed to the county highway system. Also, St. Croix County would likely have to enact seasonal loading restrictions on parts of County N or County SS. And then the highway department would need to work with the developer to determine the necessary enhancements to support their facility. Next, we just highlighted chapter 15.252 from our non-metallic mining overlay district. It does acknowledge the importance of non-metallic mining as an important industry that contributes to the county's economic well-being. However, standards have to be reviewed and analyzed to determine whether or not it would have a negative impact on the physical environment. The next phase is we took a look at the St. Croix County Comprehensive Plan and reviewed some of the policies that we feel are somewhat applicable to this request. Some of the more important ones is that the county acknowledges the conservation of mineral resources for non-metallic mining, acknowledging the need to balance the needs for non-metallic mining industry for high-quality non-metallic minerals and their extraction, processing, and transportation. It also states that additional studies on noise, traffic, real estate value, air quality, and groundwater impacts may be needed for site-specific non-metallic mineral extraction and processing. Development in the county should be consistent with the character of the surrounding neighborhood, countryside, or terrain as we start getting into some of the land use policies. Transportation policies talks about controlling access in areas of higher traffic volume to ensure access, mobility, and safety. And that truck routes should be on the most appropriate roads in order to minimize truck noise and safety impacts and reduce wear and tear on roads. Some of the other criteria that were reviewed is that the request would need to be consistent or not in conflict with the St. Croix County Natural Resource Management Plan. Development of the property would need to comply with Chapter 15 of the zoning ordinance and Chapter 14 of non-metallic mining. And then what we typically do is we'll review with the committee some of the applicable criteria that you will be weighing this application against. And so the Community Development Committee shall only recommend approval for rezoning subject to the following provisions. The rezoning and proposed use is consistent with the St. Croix County Comprehensive Plan and the local town comprehensive plan, in this case, the town of Kinnikinnick. That the rezoning and proposed use is consistent with the Natural Resource Management Plan of the county, and that the rezoning and proposed use is consistent with the St. Croix County zoning ordinance and other applicable ordinance, such as Chapter 14. The town has not disapproved the rezoning request, and as I mentioned earlier, the town has not commented on this application. And that the rezoning request and the proposed use is consistent with surrounding zoning districts and does not result in spot zoning. And that the rezoning and proposed use is consistent with surrounding land uses. So for purposes of tonight, the committee would have three options to consider. You could recommend approval of the amendment, recommend disapproval of the amendment, or continue the hearing for additional information. I would also like to point out to the committee that we've received a significant amount of public comment. We uploaded all the comments we could as of noon yesterday into your online packet. However, since yesterday at about noon, we did receive additional comments. I just want to make sure you're aware of those. Those are in your packet in front of you. Those were an additional 20 comments that we did receive. And so after review of the town and county comprehensive plans, staff would be recommending disapproval of the rezoning amendment from R2 residential to R1 residential district with a non-metallic overlay based on the following findings. that the rezoning and proposed use is not consistent with surrounding land uses such as the dwelling units and the residential subdivisions. The rezoning and proposed use is not consistent with the character of the surrounding neighborhood and countryside. Number 3, the land use goal number 9 of the town comprehensive plan states that industrial development is incompatible with the town's vision statement. Number 4, the rezoning is not consistent with the desired land use density established by the town of Kinnikinnick through the St. Croix County Comprehensive Revision to the zoning ordinance adopted in 2019. According to the town comprehensive plan, the future land use in the town will be increasingly residential, with agricultural uses decreasing, and is supported by establishing the R2 residential districts to accommodate subdivisions with 2-acre lot minimums. The rezoning is not consistent with surrounding zoning districts and results in spot zoning. The rezoning would require traffic impact analysis to determine if the proposed use would necessitate significant financial investment in county and/or town roads, along with intersections to facilitate the proposed use. And lastly, based on submitted written public comments, the rezoning may negatively impact adjoining and local area landowners' use and enjoyment of their property. That concludes our overview of the request, and if you have any questions now, I can take those, or if you want to continue, Mr. Chair.
I think what we'll do is go into public comment during the hearing, and then the committee will ask their questions of you during our conversation. Thank you, John.
Yep.
If we end up having questions, I'll call you back. At this time, if there's anybody who would like to speak in favor of this rezoning, I would ask you to come to the podium one by one, state your name, your address, and we're going to allow 2 minutes per person because of the very large number of people who would like to speak. However, the people who own this property, I'm going to break that one rule, and because you have a large investment in this, I'm going to allow you to have a couple more minutes, just because you own the property, and it would be unfair to limit you to just 2 minutes. So if you're wanting to speak, come on up to the podium and say a few words. If you don't want to speak, we'll respect that too. Yeah, would anybody like to speak in favor of? Okay. Please state your name, who you represent, and where you live.
My name is Jason Hawes. I represent Hawes Incorporated. I live in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And I would like to speak in favor of the rezone for obvious reasons. My company is the company that would like to open a nonmetallic mine. I understand that everything that's written down, I understand everyone's concerns. And as a professional miner, I'm used to addressing people's concern with dust and noise pollution. Everything's regulated as far as that goes with a mine. I did hear some things about this becoming a 119-acre mine lasting 75 years and destroying everyone's wells and everyone's properties. We don't have a mine anywhere, and we have 80 mines. Well, you can call them all mines, but they're gravel pits, sand pits, blue granite quarries, all considered technically mines, okay? The largest one we have is 40 acres. And that's a pit that we've had for 25 or 30 years. That's a busy one. We have a concrete plant right there. The difference between that mine and this one is there will be no concrete plant. The reason it might last 75 years is because we plan on opening 1 to 5 acre parcels every time we go to crush. There's blasting that's going to happen at this mine. It would happen once a year. We blast once a year, not 12 times a year, not once a week. not once a month, once a year. When we would come in with the crushing equipment, we'd move it in, we'd crush once a year. We wouldn't have the crusher there for more than 2 weeks, typically. So I just want to, just for those, I know this really doesn't have a lot to do with the rezone, but I wanted to address some of the concerns of the public about how there was a big misunderstanding about how big this mine was going to be. The reason I asked for the rezone was just so that it could be possible. That's the first step. All right, then the plan has to be made, the plan has to come into play. And if you don't really know the plan, I can understand how, oh my gosh, they're rezoning 116, 119 acres. They're going to blast us right out of the area here. And I understand all of the actual rezone concerns, and they make sense to me. Because a lot of the times when there is a non-metallic mine, a rezone request, or even a request for to open up a non-metallic mine or gravel pit, it's not consistent with any kind of comprehensive plan, because if your comprehensive plan is based on rural residential housing and farmland, there's no place that a non-metallic mine fits in there. And then I don't know of any comprehensive plans in towns that are like, you know what we should have? We should have a mining township. We should design our township to work as a mining township and welcome non-metallic mines. So I understand that this is something that would totally not go, doesn't really look like it belongs, does it? But what the problem that I have is, if you're looking to serve your community the way we do, and supply concrete and supply base course and supply material for the towns or in the surrounding areas, you need land that has the mineral to supply it. So as we go through and do our thing, I don't even know if there's a timer, that's why I'm kind of watching. That's what we're looking for. We found it on Lubick's property.
You could have another 25, 30 seconds. Would ask you to wrap her up.
Yep. Unfortunately, that's where we found the rock. That's where the landowner agreed. Unfortunately, it's not zoned for that. So, despite all of the things all the warranted, things that are in the report, we still request a rezone and would like to open a small mine. And that's it. We don't want to cause any problems. That's the first step, was to ask for a rezone so that it even could take place. If it does, wonderful. If it doesn't, that's the way it is. So that's all I can say. If anyone has questions for me from the board or anything.
No, we don't do questions. It's
Fine,
just public
that's-
comment.
all right,
Mr.
sounds
Haas,
good.
thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And I would say, for anybody who I ruffled their feathers by giving Mr. Haas a little extra time, it was simply for a matter of balance. I know for a fact that there's probably 40 people here who want to speak against it, and maybe one person or two people that want to speak for it, and I just wanted to give a little bit of balance for the number of people who are speaking for and against. So please be patient with that. Is there anybody else who would like to speak for this project? Very well, please state your name and where you live. And we're going to run the clock for 2 minutes this time.
Hello, my name is Ben Fox. I am at 2529 Powell Avenue. I have followed the county board in many ways between the Kinney and everything else as development moves from the town of Troy, eastern side, to western Kinney. I have a lot of concerns with the planning process of both the town of town of Kinney, their planning mission as the rezoning happened in the county did it. There's a lot of disagreements in that, and the town did not do its due diligence in creating an effective comprehensive plan by just saying, well, we'll just do whatever we want when things come up. Things are now come up. Secondly, it's hard to farm now in St. Croix County. You have increased traffic of blue plates that are running you off the road, driving anywhere you go. You're going to have problems because they got to get to school, they got to pick up the kids, and thus there's less of them left. And the ones that are left are now, they're getting bad health. They're, maybe a farm accident. And the Lubicks are willing to help you if something happens. There's articles in the paper about them helping out neighbors that have injured and that type of stuff. And so that's important to think of, that when everybody's here crucifying them for not health and safety, they're not moving away. They're going to live on this site. They're going to be the first ones affected by any effects of this mine. And so with that, I thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the rezoning? Please state your name and where you live.
Kevin Lubick, 517 County Road SS. We obviously own the property. My grandpa bought it in the 70s along with my dad. And we were approached by a friend of mine that works for Mr. Hawes, and they were looking, like he said, for limestone, and we did tour a lot of their pits. And that was a major turn on for us, looking at their work. They do a great job. It's not this huge gravel pit. It's, like he said, a few acres at a time. And our farm is full of lime rock. I mean, there's spots that we can't hardly farm it. Can't put a fence post in the ground. So we've seen an opportunity, which I would assume if somebody's seen an opportunity like that on their farm, they would say, hey, why shouldn't we take it? And we've taken a lot of heat from people assuming things over the last couple weeks. And I want to say, assuming makes an ass out of you and me. If you don't know what's happening, educate yourself. It's not going to be what everybody thinks it's going to be. And my house is 100 yards from where they're going to start. I have 4 kids. I have a wife. We have pets. We have animals. We're all staying there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in favor of this rezoning? And I'll ask one more time. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in favor of the rezoning? Very well. We'll take people who'd like to speak in opposition to the rezoning. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to the rezoning? And we'll do it in an orderly way. I'll just pick people. Ma'am, go ahead and walk up the podium, say your name, where you live, and you'll have 2 minutes. Thank you. Very well.
Jana Joplin, 459 County Road SS. And I guess I just want to say is my husband and I moved 20 years ago here out of Apple Valley because of rezoning issue. They went from houses to a bus transit station. We chose Kinnick for 2 reasons. One is the peace and quiet, and And then, so when we saw the comprehensive plan that Kinnick did, we said, finally, we have a place where we feel it's our forever home. We feel that this new gravel pit proposal is totally against what the comprehensive plan put into place. So now I'm looking at my forever home no longer going to be my forever home. And that's why I think, we should say no.
Thank you, ma'am. We're going to bring somebody over from the other room, so I'm hoping they're ready. Yeah, jump on in there. Let's.
My name is Charlene Stoddard. I live in Roberts. I am here tonight only to oppose this based on a recent proposal to our village. So just on the other side of the roundabouts on in Roberts there, sorry. They are proposing 1.3 million square foot facility that is going to bring over 200 trucks total in and out of that facility a day. And the truck stop down in Roberts is already extremely overwhelmed. We have people, several trucks by the time I go home tonight will be parked at the park and ride there. Again, I don't think the infrastructure is there to support this kind of project. I think that's about all I have to say tonight. Thank you, guys.
Very well, thank you. Sir, you had your hand up next. Please state your name and where you live.
Hi, my name's Garth Mueller. I live at 456 Sleepy Hollow Drive. First thing I'd like to say is thank you for this opportunity. Thanks for letting all of us come and be able to speak. I want to recognize the work that's been done both at the township level and the county level at these comprehensive plans. I was actually part of the planning commission when the Kinnickinnick Town comprehensive plan was developed. I was part of that planning commission from day one until it was proposed to the town board for adoption. So I know what's in that comprehensive plan. I've been a part of every meeting that went on during that. There's many, many hours that go into these planning sessions, and there's many hours that go into looking forward into the future to help in situations that we're in right now. And I value the input that the staff gathered from the two comprehensive plans. I second what was listed in the findings and the recommendation. I oppose, based on spot zoning, if you do approve this, this appears to be spot zoning, which goes against what the township of Kinnickinnick has put in the comprehensive plan. I think there's a lot of concern with economic and private landowner rights, and a lot of that was addressed in the comprehensive plans, both at the county but especially at the township level. I'd like to add to the points that were already included in the staff recommendations that section 7.2 of the comprehensive plan, which talks about economic development and assessing future conditions. It's page 33 in the comprehensive plan of Kinnickinnick, if you want to look at it. Industrial uses are not suitable land uses in the town. The town wants to ensure that new developments do not jeopardize the rural character and quality of life. The town supports the right of residents to have small business. Am I done?
Sorry, but there's so many people that want to
All right,
talk.
I understand.
We appreciate
Thank
you
again.
coming. Thank you. Who's next? Oh, great, go ahead.
My name is Aaron Herker. I live at 609 100th Street, approximately 1 mile directly north of this, just on the other side of N. I thought that the presentation that we watched was very well spoken of all of the reasons that this is not in meeting with the expectations of the county plan. I guess my biggest concern, this is an area, I moved here approximately 10 years ago. This is an area where there have been farms, but there are new houses going up, and I think that's going to come to a stop. And if we're talking about economic growth and all those kind of things, there's going to be a pretty substantial trade-off to this. I think the roads are clearly not designed in this purpose. This is an area where people can take walks with their pets, with their kids, ride bikes, and that is going to drastically change the nature of this area. This does not fit with the zoning or the other uses in this area. There are developments right next door, right below, and just north of what you can see on that map that would be directly impacted by this going forward. My own son, from personal standpoint, my own son suffers from asthma. I do have great fears of our ability to continue to live there, and quite frankly, no one's desire to buy our house in that scenario. I also have the good fortune of living, if we just go about 1.5 miles further north, we have the joy of the flooded Twin Lakes Road every year. So I feel like I'm getting it from both directions as far as very difficult situations that are now coming up a few short years after I moved in. So.
Thanks for coming. All right, who's next? You could just stand up and start walking, ma'am. It's fine.
Who's on deck after her? We're trying to get through as many people as we can. So.
Right, the less time in between speakers, the better.
Moved up, that's fine, just saying. My name is Emily Vondriska, and I'm in the, my back half of my property abuts to Kinnickinnick. And before I start the 2 minutes, oh my God, I'm a science teacher, and I just wanted to do this not only because I'm a neighbor, but because this is a real-life environmental situation that my own students are following, so be kind. No money from this quarry will benefit Kinnickinnick Township. The limestone harvested from this site will be sold in another county. Quarries are not known for their aesthetic value. Once the limestone is depleted, quarry companies do not stick around to rewild or make an effort to leave no trace. I know he said that it was 119 acres, and that is only going to be a couple acres at a time, but the end result will be a big quarry. These acres will be devoid of trees, habitat, wildlife, and everything that represents the country life that residents sought when they chose to settle in this beautiful glacier-created area. Typically, a quarry's lifespan is between 10 to 75 years. After that, the mine is no longer useful, and what is left is a vast, crumbling hole in the ground. Children and adults alike like to climb quarry walls, posing a serious safety hazard. Water collecting the post-production quarry can be only a few inches in depth, creating sluggish water that is prime breeding ground for mosquitoes. Water collecting at a depth of several feet will be an attractant for people looking to swim in the artificially created lake. Who will pay to put up barriers or monitor the safety of the swimmers? When a limestone quarry is created, trees are cut down and the top layer of soil and grassland is removed, exposing the rock layers to accelerated weathering and erosion. Erosion is the carrying away of debris and sediment. The sediment is deposited somewhere else, such as low-lying areas, including ponds and nearby streams. I have one. That will fill faster and be collection reservoirs for quarry contaminants. Without the help of trees and grassland plants to hold the soil in place and capture groundwater, there is less groundwater that enters the area's aquifer. Spaces between rock layers, in case you don't know that collect water. That means that the neighbors who have wells to get their water, wow.
Yeah, 2 minutes goes pretty quick. Thank you.
If you want to know the rest of this, I have copies for it.
Thanks very
where
much.
I am, and you also have copies too.
Who's next? Your name and where you live.
My name is Margaret Easton. I live at 474 Sleepy Hollow Drive, and I'm about 100 feet away from phase 2 of the mine. I'm concerned with noise, dust, disruption of my quiet, family lifestyle, and I raise and train horses. I'm not so sure how much horses are going to like the vibration, the noise, the dust. It definitely will decline my property value by 30%, and the property would not be able to be used for its highest best use. I have a large barn, indoor arena, a lot of fencing. I'm concerned about the road damage and safety of our walkers, pets, kids, bicyclers that go up and down Double S, County Road N, and the surrounding area. I'm also worried about we've got a really high water table. I'm not sure how deep my well is, but I have spoken with some people whose wells are 60 feet deep, and what's going to happen with our wells. We moved here 18 years ago to have a quiet country lifestyle, and this just doesn't fit into that Kinnickinnick feeling. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Charles Harr. I live at 460 Sleepy Hollow. I'm really glad I did not keep my 150-page speech. But I want to focus on just one point. He brought it up earlier. My wife and son have asthma. I am the one that submitted the documentation from the National Institute of Health and also from numerous medical people from across the country. I read a lot of science and medical journals. Given the size of this quarry and the dust it produces because it's an open-air quarry, it is impossible to be safe within a 3-mile range for certain. Out to 5 or 6 miles, you can kind of get into what's considered safe, but 3 miles in all directions for certain are simply not safe to live. And the one thing that's weird about open-air quarries, or of great concern, is that this can't be mitigated. All the science across the entire country shows that the dust, especially if there's grinding on site, cannot be stopped or mitigated. Not with spritzing, not with hosing it down, watering it, unless it's fully contained 100% indoors. this dust, and most of it invisible, will be in the air. And this area is just getting higher and higher, more residential. I saw several houses being put up on my way here, driving. This is not a request on the edge near other commercial territories. This is not a request out in the middle of just a lot of agricultural land. This is a request dead in the middle of a residential area that will suffer from these effects. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you for coming. Next up.
Hi, my name is John Rock. I live at 1073 Cooley Trail. We're about a third of a mile southeast of this project. Me and my wife moved here about 6 years ago, and part of the reason for coming in the first place, well, my son actually made comments to us about how we should just pack our bags and just stay out there, because the people that we bought the property from invited us to come at night and sit there and enjoy the peace and quiet. And we did. We did a lot of research before we came, and we were looking for that quietness and that atmosphere that Kinnickinnick offers. I don't see anything here. I wish that he could mine and have his ability to be able to do this, but it's just the wrong timing. There's been too much development. There's been too much residential going on. There's bike trails that are in the area. That is definitely going to affect that. There's going to put people at jeopardy with the amount of traffic that's on the road. It's definitely something that if you research this online and start taking a look at the research that's been done on limestone mining, a lot of the points that people are bringing up that they had said were worries and not being informed, there actually is information out there that will support this, that there is damage that can be done to wells. It does pollute the air. And one of the bigger things for us is the noise is going to be constant. If you've ever been near a crusher, they will run generally. I don't know what his intentions are. I haven't heard them, but usually when they're running crushers, they run them until they don't need them. So anyway, that's my time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jean Rock. I'm John's better half. I live at 1073 Cooley Trail. Thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts. I think what you're hearing tonight, as John had alluded to, we're one of the new kids on the block. We came here about 6 years ago. People have been here for decades. We bought a lifestyle. We bought the quiet, the serene. We did extensive research before we moved here. We lived in the metro area of the Twin Cities before this, and this is what we were looking for, this type of a lifestyle. We looked at the zoning. We looked at the comprehensive plans. It mattered to us. This is our pursuit of happiness. This is our lifestyle. So please take that into account when you're voting. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing me. My name is Laura Harr. I'm Charles Harr's wife. I live at 460 Sleepy Hollow Drive, just a little bit below this map. As my husband mentioned before, if this quarry goes in, it will drive us from our home of 20 years. And I cannot say that we are the only one that this will happen to. I speak for concerns for myself, for my neighbors' neighbors. This township has put together a plan to allow us to live in an area like this and have our peace and quiet and allow the towns to grow around us. This land also sits in the watershed of the Kinnickinnick River. I'm the one who sent you those documents and screenshots from the water that comes from our lands that will be affected by our wells, will affect our wells, will affect the streams, will affect the pieces that send water throughout our area, also feed that Kinnickinnick River. So it's not us. It's just us. It's our neighbors, neighbors, the people who enjoy the Kinney, and the people who live in this community who will be affected. And across, even beyond River Falls, how far does the Kinney go? How many people rely on it? I urge you to turn down this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh Cohen. You can see my house on this map. About a stone's throw, 1,000 feet away from the corner to corner, property to property. There's going to be a lot of people that speak tonight more eloquently in regards to the environmental effects that happen because of this zoning. But I will say from a personal level that, I respect Mr. Lubick in saying that his family is going to stay in his home. But to be blunt, if there's any issues with air quality, my family can't. I have a 6 and a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old that has very severe asthma. We spent the last 2 years with the St. Paul Respiratory Clinic building up his lung capacity. And to be blunt, we live in this community and in this area for a reason. We can't live in a city. We can't. We need somewhere with clean air. And to be blunt, if this creates air quality issues, then we can't live here. And I know that's me speaking personally about my personal experience, but that's me. And that's how it affects me. And I'm sure there's going to be 100 other people that it affects in a similar way. So thank you for your time and letting me speak.
Thank you for coming. Next up.
My name is Nick Cudd. I live right across the road. Before I say anything about the water, the dust, noise, I want you guys to look at where my house is. If you have a 4-year-old, 11-year-old, 13-year-old, and a 16-year-old, would you want 120 loads coming out of that driveway right across the road? I've got nothing against the Lubicks. My family has known their family for years. Years. Good people. No hard feelings. But this can't happen. This is ag. There's on double S and N. It's a designated bike route. You know how many bikers I see in the summer? 30, 40. I've got family, friends that are in the real estate, appraisal, and building. I will take a 30% hit. The county will not lower my taxes by 30%, but I have to eat all that. I understand what they're trying to do, but they have to understand what we're trying to do too. I don't live in a $100,000 home, which would be a $70,000 home. I live in a $350,000 home. So you're going to take over $100,000 out of my pocket like that. That's it.
Thank you. Next up.
Hi, my name's Maylene Ozak, and I actually live right in the corner down there. You can probably see it. I will actually be looking out my bay window, my picture window at all this, which I do anyway today. I actually want to appeal to the more economic side of this. We already have, and I looked it up, 77 sand and gravel pits in St. Croix County today. And we have a population of around 96,000, I believe. I did look that up, and I have that in the letter that I sent this morning. And I compared that to what Washington County, Minnesota had. They have 58 sand and gravel pits with 200 and some odd thousand of a population. The increased population is anticipated to be about 1% every year here, and the amount of sand and gravel pits we currently have can support this area for at least 50 years. If we put in another one, the community, I don't think, can support the infrastructure and the maintenance necessary for the roads. The economic hit for the devaluation of our property and the tax increases that will occur as a result of all of this happening in our own backyard that we didn't anticipate when we moved out there. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Next up.
Hello, I'm Carissa Helt. I live down on Cooley Trail 1132. And I have 3 kids, one on the way, and so I share a lot of the same concerns regarding the bus route and the air quality in general with my kids. The reason why we moved out there is for the same reason as all of our neighbors, is to enjoy that beautiful, serene country lifestyle with the fresh air. I think we've all been thrown into this situation where we've all been researching tirelessly all of the potential impacts of this, not thinking we'd ever have to be fighting for our own land. It's impossible to ignore the health concerns, air pollution, water pollution, soil erosion, sinkhole dangers, environmental impact to native species in the area, the danger to vegetation, the heavy traffic on the small country roads, the noise and vibration issues, and depletion of the natural resources of the land. I've been reading article after article. I literally have piles of paper at home. Every single one concerns me. There's no way to bypass any of these concerns. They are legitimate. I understand the right to your own land and the freedoms within that. However, when it becomes a nuisance to your neighbors with what you want to do on your land, that's where it's deeply concerning to me. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate all the work everybody's done and all the research.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your brevity.
Anyone else in this room then that will want to speak next time, Jack? Otherwise, I'll move on to the next room. Doesn't mean you won't get a chance, you just have to wait a while.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Adam Gray, 1005 King Drive. My main concern is the health risk that this can produce here. Just to break it down, it all leads to lung cancer, whether it's the diesel, whether it's the crystalline silica that the air pollution provides or puts out. So the common denominator here is health risk. For me anyways. The proposed gravel pit is not consistent with the character of the surrounding neighborhood or the countryside. It does not support the town's comprehensive plan of increasing residential property, as it also it will decrease the quality of life for those in the surrounding area. This is a growing residential neighborhood filled with community members who enjoy peace and quiet, who enjoy being outside with their families, who have hobbies that correlate to the outdoors without the probability of a health risk. You have children outside all day long from spring through fall. They have a much greater physical activity, have a higher metabolic rates, and the little ones, even like myself, I have one little one at home, hand-to-mouth action constantly. With the wind that we have out there, the air pollution will reach all of us. Doesn't matter the proximity that you are to the proposed site. Every year, the kids will have more exposure through ingestion, inhalation. Every year of exposure increases the probability of health conditions. Before our children even have a decision to leave the house as adults, they will have been exposed to many years of pollution. Mine will be looking at 17 years at the minimum. All conditions that could be longstanding and everlasting. I think the convenience of this proposed location shouldn't be a priority over the health and well-being of the citizens of this community, especially our children. I hope you take my comments into consideration.
Thank you. Now we're waiting for people from next door. Come on in, head to the podium, give us your name and where you live, and make your comments.
Hi, my name is Michelle Judge. I'm probably going to pass out. I'm really nervous here. I live at 1046 Cooley Trail, and I've been there about 32 years. My husband and I bought an old house that is poured concrete, and we are concerned with the idea that they're talking about, excuse me, when we moved out there, and some of our older neighbors can attest to this, there are numerous springs on all that property out there. We've got one neighbor that has water standing in their yard because another neighbor built a house. We've got water standing through our property because another neighbor put in a pond. This is something you really got to look at, is the amount of springs that are in that ground in that entire area. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Please state your name and where you live.
My name is Levon Middleton. I live on Sleepy Hollow Drive. My husband and I built a house 22 years ago on Sleepy Hollow. And for the reasons that have been mentioned by several people, I won't repeat them, lifestyle and health. But one thing that hasn't been mentioned, and that is noise. And think about the noise of the trucks going back and forth, 60 a day, is that what they're talking about? Think about the blasting, think about the digging out the rock, and think about how loud it is when a chunk of rock hits the truck. And this maybe isn't the most important issue. All the other issues are more important, but no one has mentioned this one, and I will be very much impacted by that. I'm, 200 yards from where this hole is going to be. Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
So my name is Dan Funk. I live at 760 107th Street near Twin Lakes, about 2 miles north of the proposed gravel pit. So back in 1962, the Conservation Department issued a permit to the village of Roberts to discharge an unlimited quantity of wastewater, undisinfected wastewater, into Twin Lakes. As a result, the level of Twin Lakes has risen about 12 feet, and the wastewater treatment plant is projected to be inundated by as soon as 2026. So far, 4 homes have been lost. Mine is next. My point is, short-term decisions have unintended long-term consequences. This is incompatible with a long-term plan. It sets a dangerous precedent. It's environmentally irresponsible, and it's unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I understand this gentleman had been the last person to say they wanted to speak. I would ask if there is anybody else, just to make sure. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak either for or opposed to this rezoning? I'll ask one more time. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak either for or opposed to this rezoning? One more? Okay. We just ask for your name and where you live.
My name is Michael Taylor. I live on 615 Schwalen Court. I'll keep it brief, just to add to the concerns for the Kinnickinnic River watershed. I used to live in the Twin Cities and came over this way a lot to do a lot of trout fishing in the Kinney River, so I do have a large concern for the health of that river. There's been some other projects going on for the health of that river as well, but trout are notoriously fickle fish. Any change in water quality, temperature, and even flow rates can cause them a lot of harm. So a lot of people travel long distances to fish the Kinnickinnic River. I used to drive 2 hours to fish for a day. I have friends that still do it. So it'd be a shame to see that river degrade in any way.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak either in favor of or opposed to the rezoning in Kinnickinnic? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, and we will address our business items. The first being the ordinance to amend the comprehensive zoning ordinance, chapter 15.545, section 5, town 28N, range 18W, town of Kinnickinnic. The first thing we need to do is have a motion, and then we can have conversation.
Hold it. Mr. Chair, you don't have to have a motion to begin discussion, so the options are either to forward an ordinance to the board or to recommend denial or recommend something different, like a smaller, but I think your two basic options are either to make a motion to recommend denial or make a motion to
Let me clarify.
pass the ordinance.
Let me clarify one thing then. If this committee recommends denial, does that go to the county board, or is that the end of it?
Yes.
It still
So
goes to the county
every,
board.
every zoning petition is entitled to have consideration by the county board. So if the board, or so if this committee doesn't approve of the ordinance, its other alternative, absent making a modification to that ordinance, is to recommend denial of the petition. It doesn't happen a lot, I realize, but that form is in a resolution, which I think would be in, I think it's been noticed such that this, it's considered that there'll be action on this particular request, so the committee can forward a resolution to the board if they disapprove, if they're recommending disapproval, because the county board has to act on it either way.
Very good. I appreciate that. And for the benefit of the people who are in our audience today, I would mention that Mr. Scott Cox is the Corporation Counsel of St. Croix County, which means he's the chief, he's the lawyer. He's the county's legal counsel. So that's why we're turning to him for advice on the legal matters, in case you're wondering.
I do think that staff did draft, both options, and I'm not sure where they are, but if John can address that?
They're on package page 38, I
And
believe.
Mr. Chairman, we also forwarded hard copies before the meeting, so you do have a hard copy you can look at as well.
Great.
Both a draft resolution recommending denial or a draft ordinance approving the rezoning.
Thanks, John. Well, who wants to go first?
We didn't have an opportunity to have any questions of the board. We went directly into the public hearing, so I'd have a question regarding this. My question is, being the proximity of this site to the city of River Falls, is this within their extraterritorial boundary agreement with the city of River Falls, or does it lie outside it?
So back in 2019, the town of Kinnikinnick and the city of River Falls executed a cooperative boundary plan. And that plan basically established an urban reserve area in which the city and town agreed on properties that will be annexed in the future. And that northerly boundary line of that urban reserve area falls about 2 miles south of the subject property. So it's not really impacted by this proposal.
Other questions for John? All right. Any other comments or discussion? We had a chance to, Ed, what are you thinking? I see you reaching for the microphone.
Well, I'm a little disappointed that the town of Kinnikinnick didn't make a resolution. I know we don't need it, but I think they should have. I would like to make a motion and a resolution denying the rezoning of the application from R2 to R1 as provided by the staff. It lists the reasons, and I don't know if we need to list them all or whether we should just approve this as a draft application to the county. I guess I'm not quite sure how to proceed with that, but there's 5 reasons they have listed here.
You're welcome to read them if you want to.
It's, well, it basically, for the audience, it basically, it's not consistent with the zoning of the surrounding land, and is not consistent with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. It's not with the town comprehensive plan states. Rezoning is not consistent with the desired land use density established by the town and through St. Croix County Comprehensive Revision, and it goes on there a little bit more. And the rezoning is not consistent with the surrounding zoning districts and results in spot zoning. So I make a motion to approve this resolution. Denying. To deny.
Just for clarification, it's a recommendation to the
Correct.
board for
Correct.
denial.
Yes, a recommendation, correct. Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that we deny this, recommend to the Board of Supervisors that we deny this rezoning. Is there further discussion? Dick, we haven't heard from you. You have an opinion that you'd like to share? Okay.
I think that the staff did a wonderful job of outlining everything that is in black and white. And if it's in black and white, there isn't a lot of arguing. That's my thoughts.
Sean?
Yeah, I just want to agree with Dick and Ed that I understand the private property rights and all that stuff, but that for me, when it starts affecting the neighbors and other people within a large radius, property values, health, etc., I support recommending we reject the rezoning.
I might also add to that, the planning process, I'm quite familiar with it, being I'm on the Somerset Town Board and on this committee, that it's a long process. It takes a lot of time, effort, money, and we got to be consistent with our planning. That's why we do it.
Very good. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Same sign. It passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I know there's at least one question that was mouthed to me from the audience, and I think it's sort of important to answer. So what happens next? This resolution goes to the Board of Supervisors at its meeting in, I believe it's on June 1st. So the options that the board has at that time is to adopt the resolution, or if the board for some reason disagrees with the resolution and believes that the ordinance be granted or adopted, the county board has the option of directing that the matter be brought back to this committee so that the ordinance can be drafted and forwarded back to them. So if the board doesn't adopt the resolution, its only other option is to bring this matter back to this committee.
And you can renegotiate, basically. They can bounce back to us. We come back here in 2 months, renegotiate.
Well, the board would direct the committee to draft the ordinance and bring it back to the county board for adoption.
I'll allow the interaction with the public because I was about to ask the same question.
So there is not another public hearing.
There won't be another public hearing.
No.
It'll be within the county board to do that.
The county board will, if the county board doesn't agree to accept this committee's recommendation and pass the resolution denying the petition for rezone, the alternative that the county board has, and if it does that, it has to bring it back to this committee for this committee to approve the ordinance. In other words, grant the petition as requested and then bring it back to the board for adoption as an ordinance.
The county board,
in my 26 years,
the county board cannot direct this committee to approve.
Well,
Would you like me to interpret? I do that quite frequently.
The county board can direct the committee to draft the ordinance and forward it back to the county board for approval.
The county board can only say no. If it's going to be approved, it has to come back through the committee next month.
Correct, but the committee would have, the committee doesn't have any option to say, no, we disagree with the county board. The county board can tell the committee to draft the ordinance and bring it, and so that the county board can consider it let's say at its meeting in July.
Very good. At that point, do we have the option to table it?
No.
Can I appeal that?
I think the point, though, is that June 1st, the ordinance isn't somehow going to be adopted. That
Right.
isn't one of the options that can happen on June 1st.
Right.
The only thing that can happen on June 1st is the county board agrees with you, or the county board will send it back to you with instructions to complete it, which would then provide notice for everyone that they could come back in at a future community development meeting.
Very good.
But the Community Development Committee would have no option if that were
Right.
to, basically, the county board's going to tell you what to do to bring it back. Then it goes back to county board. Right.
Well, very good. That is, I'm not going to entertain this conversation. Feel free to look me up online and send me an email. All right, we're going to move on with our agenda. Item number 2 is a financial report, and that will be from our administrator, Mr. Ken Witt. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming.
Nobody wants to hear the financial report?
These financial reports are stellar.
They weren't here for me? Thank you. All right. So the financial report, I thought was going to be the highlight of the evening, but, you know. John stole the show here and with the public hearing. So anyways, Register of Deeds, I'm going to point out, Register of Deeds feeds through the year are already 50%. This is through April, but they've already recorded 50% of our budgeted fees, which is indicative of the growth going on in the county, the number of properties being developed, the number of sales that are happening. That's measured through the fees collected by the Register of Deeds office. So it's an economic indicator. We can see that. When we look at some of the other budgets, we're not seeing a lot of activity, but again, this is through the April timeframe. A lot of what we do, the recycling and stuff is seasonal, so you're going to see spikes of that when we get to that. The Parks Department also, you're going to see those revenues increasing and expenses increasing as we get into the summer season. So while those percentages may be off right now, they'll catch up as we move on through the year. And then the other budgets that we have on there, there wasn't anything in particular that I needed to point out on them, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you have.
Are there any questions for our administrator? Thank you, sir. Next up is our floodplain overlay district rewrite and recreate introduction, which is just coming up. Oh, this is Brett Boudreau.
There we go. Mike is not on. Brett Boudreau, St. Croix County Planning Land Information. Want to give you an update on our floodplain overlay district recreation, rewrite and recreation. So looking at the background information, we're planning to recreate 17.4 floodplain overlay district of the county ordinances to update several sections of that ordinance. The last time that ordinance was updated was 2005 with a recent map amendment in 2016. The Wisconsin DNR has a new standard model floodplain ordinance that became effective April 8th, 2021 that reflects state law changes, and we want to be up to date with those state law changes. So, and we're also going to be taking this chapter 17.40, subchapter 4 of the old chapter 17 and recreating it as a standalone ordinance. So I'll just give you a brief update on the whole process. The purpose of the rewrite, the creation of that separate chapter, some changes that we'll be discussing with staff and bringing back to this committee when we bring it back for further review and then a projected time frame. As I said, currently the floodplain is in chapter 17.40, subchapter 4 of the old chapter 17, which we recreated into chapter 15 when we redid this general zoning. We want to make it compliant with state and federal law and make improvements for CDD interpretation and administration, and also consistency for the floodplain owners to make sure that we're following state statutes. A little further background, we did our comprehensive revision that was brought forward tonight in 2019. That was completed. At that time, the floodplain was part of chapter 17. Chapter 17 is mostly gone now because general zoning is now in chapter 15. We did this last year, if you recall, with the shoreland. That's now in chapter 16, and we're going to put the floodplain into chapter 18. Those are separate chapters. I want to separate those out because of different procedures, somewhat different definitions. Sometimes those things overlapped into the different zoning chapters. And also chapter 15 is for towns that are in county zoning. Shoreland and floodplain includes all towns within the county. So shoreline and floodplain is all towns. General zoning is only for the towns that are in county zoning. A little bit of quick background. There's a map of our county with the floodplain on it in blue. Willow River, Apple River, Kinney, O'Galley, Rush, Hay Creek, and a couple ones that go into the Red Cedar there on the east. There's 2,300 acres in floodplain. Within that floodplain, we have 812 buildings, 589 parcels, $134 million of assessed value between buildings and land. There are two different types of floodplain. It consists of floodway and flood fringe. The floodway is the actual channel and immediate area that contains the regional flood, and the flood fringe is the area outside of that that also gets inundated during the regional flood. Uses in the flood fringe uses in the floodplain itself or the floodway are very limited, non-structural. Flood fringe, there can be structures in there. And in a second, I'll talk about this, but there's actually another floodplain zoning district that's called the general floodplain. That shows up on here when we don't know if it's flood fringe or floodway. And part of the new ordinance will assist in figuring that out. Again, it's going to become chapter 18. It's going to be based on the DNR model. There will be some administrative sections because it's no longer in a chapter 17 where it was. The administrative sections are highlighted. And the big part, we're going to update the hydraulic and hydrologic studies to analyze development. Easy for me to say. That's where, when it's general floodplain, the applicant will be required to do these studies under the guidance of an engineer to determine if it's flood fringe or floodway. Then those regulations for flood fringe or floodway will apply. And then a potential changes is 2019 was Wisconsin Act 175. If the Wisconsin DNR regulates repair, reconstruction, or improvement of a non-conforming building, so this is a building that's in the flood fringe or floodway that doesn't conform with the regulations, the DNR may not base that regulation on cost if the building is changed to comply with flood protection elevations. So meaning it used to be that if it was over 50%, they couldn't do it, but now the DNR can no longer regulate that way if it is brought into compliance. And counties can be more restrictive than what the state has. So that's one of the things. We do have the authority to continue to regulate by cost. So we'll be reviewing that as part of this project and bringing that forward to the committee. A projected timeline. We want to complete the staff review and finalize the draft document. It's well on the way to being complete. We'll get the draft ordinance, needs to be submitted first to the Wisconsin DNR for their review in June or July. They're going to make sure that our ordinance complies with the DNR model and we have all of the boxes checked. We'd like to bring that back to the CDC for public hearing in August or September with county board action in October or November, depending upon when it comes to you. And then that adopted ordinance would go back to the DNR one further time for their final checkoff. Any questions?
Anybody? Scott?
I have a few.
Yes, Scott.
First off, with this, I know that it's been a few years back, but the FEMA came through and redrew all the maps and the elevations and
Yes.
for the floodplain and everything else. And I know there have been many, many people that have had to spend thousands of dollars to fight over what the actual flood line should
Correct.
be at. While trying to sell their house or while trying to, because all of a sudden they got assessed, well, oh, by the way, you just got turned into floodplain, so now you have to pay flood insurance, which a lot of people don't realize how much that is. As we're doing this, how are we going to, because that'll be touchy if we start going back and taking these, reassessing that these people are going to be in floodplain. Are you using the materials that have been done by the engineers then to help with these, or are you doing everything independent, or
Those letters of map amendment or revision that have occurred will be in the file. They'll be part of this amendment or this change, but this is a text amendment or recreation only. We're not looking at the maps per se, the mapping part of it. We will be, we'll have new LiDAR data, new elevation data that was flown this spring that could be used in the future to update the maps, but that is a process of getting on the DNR and FEMA's schedule and calendar, and I really don't know when that could occur, but that is a big problem, I know.
So and then a second question on that. One of the things that it isn't necessarily completely in line with just floodplain, flood fringe, but it is an issue that comes up, and I don't know where it's really addressed, is you have a lot of properties. One that when I was on the town board in Star Prairie, we had a development called Hidden Ponds. And this particular one had all kinds of closed-in depressions that would actually have ponds that were holding water, and these ponds sat on kind of karst underlayments, and people would build houses like below a pond, and they can't figure out why all of a sudden they have this hydraulic pressure and their basement turns into a swimming pool. And wondering, do we have any way to help with those situations, or you see that as, this is just one incident for one development, but is this something that we've ever addressed?
It wouldn't be addressed through this process because they're not going to be in the floodplain most likely. They'd be addressed during the land development process, and I'm aware of that subdivision, and we have our shoreland and wetland regulations that are applied, and I know there were a lot of drainage easements put in that area. I think a lot of that comes out in the siting of the homes that possibly has to occur differently and better, and unfortunately we at the county don't regulate the building permits.
I have one simple question. On where we can be more restrictive, is that the only place the county could be more restrictive, is on that use of the values of the housing?
Well, I talked to the DNR floodplain coordinator. There are some counties that, like currently, we do allow development in the flood fringe if they meet all of the flood proofing requirements and everything. There are some counties that have, I think, severely restricted development in the flood fringe. It's not in the model ordinance that the DNR has, and it's not in our current one. That'd be one place. I'm not really sure of others.
I guess when it gets down to the nitty gritty, I'd like to know where the county is being more restrictive than the state, just to see where we're at.
Right, okay.
Well, with that kind of in mind too, I just so I'm understanding this, so the properties that we're going to regulate, obviously that nobody's building in the floodplain. Existing dwellings that if they're in need of improvements, is the rules going to be set for denial of those types, and how do you see us regular? That's the first question. If we are, then how do we regulate that?
I don't see us making any change to our current ordinance as far as what they can do with non-conforming structures. They have to meet that 50%. They have to do their construction on fill unless they can make a case that it's not applicable on fill through other hardship means. I don't see us making any changes to things like that. What was another part of the question that I'm...
And it's just, how are we going to regulate that? Because again, they don't come to you for the building permit. So how do we, it always comes back to enforcement. What tools are we going to have in place so that if these things happen, that we have
Usually
an enforcement?
they'll have to have a filling or a grading permit, and they'll come to us, and then we'll find out that their project is in the floodplain. So then the floodplain ordinance applies.
Well, what if it's general reconstruction? Their house got half wiped out for being in the floodplain. And I'm sorry I'm going on this, but I'm just trying to figure out, okay, so they go to do a restructure and they don't have any intentions of doing any fill or anything. They just want to slap some more boards up, even though the house is half gone. I know of one in the town of Star Prairie that should have been gone, but they restructured, rebuilt. So how do we, do you see a tool of how we can get there for those?
I can research that further and find some.
I think a lot of it would have to do with our building inspectors. We'd have to really get those on board. That's where it comes from, because if it gets, I mean, they got to get the building permit, and our inspectors have to be up to speed.
Any more questions? I have one. When it comes to remapping or reevaluating the maps,
Yes.
is that a federal function?
It's a federal function and a Wisconsin DNR function. The Wisconsin DNR has a floodplain coordinator, and last time Wisconsin did any major floodplain mapping, it was coordinated through our Wisconsin floodplain coordinator with the FEMA. But I think there's FEMA money, and I believe that FEMA has higher priority areas than our area.
So that's not something we get to have much input with. All right.
No.
All right. I seem to remember there were some issues that have come to this committee over the years.
Yes,
that
we've had letters of map amendment and map changes, and then this committee would see a letter of map amendment or a letter of map change that
Yeah.
would come in to change the maps.
Yeah, and it's always involved the coming from the feds and then through the state. That's right. Okay. Any other questions? Nicely done, and we're looking forward to seeing the results.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, Tim, the report on Resource Management Division. This is the real ice cream. This is the cherry on top of the meeting.
This is fun stuff.
I've been looking forward to this.
No crowd. It's great.
They don't know what they're missing.
Yeah. I think this will fit on there. So I was going to give a short update of what we've been up to at Resource Management Division, and maybe give you some ideas of some things we're going to be working on or have just finished. We have 4 goals in the division. Basically protect ground and surface water, restore and protect, improve fish and wildlife habitat, preserve ag land, improve soil health, and maintain an effective recycling program. To get those goals accomplished, we have a number of approaches. One of them is providing technical assistance to landowners and other partners. And in 2020, we designed 20 projects. Staff went out on 236 site visits, which is less than they would normally have gone out. It was down a little bit because of COVID. We were trying to stay pretty close to the vest. And 94 landowners were directly assisted. And 20 natural resource concerns, that would be like a manure spill or erosion complaint, were followed up on during the year by staff. One of the other approaches is to use financial assistance, and we put out $207,000 of cost share this last year with landowners, and that basically leveraged these work products, nutrient management plans, 900 acres, 913 acres, 14 grass waterways were installed, 473 acres of cover crops were tried out by landowners. We took out 6 manure storage sites that were no longer needed by landowners. Sealed 10 wells, and then we did 1 wetland renovation and 1 critical area treatment. So that's pretty good for a year that was a COVID year, and we had to kind of work innovatively throughout the year. Judy asked about nutrient management plans, then she didn't make the meeting, but nutrient management plans are important for the county because they do result in a little better nutrient management by the landowner, but they also have some conservation stipulations in those nutrient management plans. They have to meet T and some of those kinds of things, and so it's an important way to get conservation on a lot of land. This last year, we reviewed and accepted 46,840 acres of nutrient management plans. That's kind of leveling off, and I think Judy was always interested in how we can get more of these, and really we have 5 or 6 towns that have not accepted or brought into the zoning that'd be necessary to do farmland preservation. And so unless we can convince those towns to rezone, we will not get very much more nutrient management plans. So there's even the town of Emerald, which is predominantly agriculture, does not have zoning that would allow farmland preservation in that town. So that's where we've kind of stabilized there. Another approach that we use is collaboration with partners. We worked with 26 municipalities on recycling, and we really had to work with them because we have kind of less money to work with on that program, or basically a flat funding, and costs have gone up. And so we're working with them to try to target the money we do have to try to get the best possible recycling program in each of those municipalities. We worked with Sustain Hudson, a local organization, on creating recycling videos. We worked with DNR. They have several water specialists that we work with on different issues, permitting as well as complaints, and on grants. We worked with our Association of Wisconsin Land and Water on a number of issues and weighed in on committees, mostly all online this last year. And then we do attend and participate in the St. Croix County Sportsman's Alliance, and we participate, we work with them on several projects each year. I think this last year we worked on, was that Pine Lake, I think it was. Yeah, we helped with the landing there, and the parking area needed improvement to accommodate the amount of interest in boats. This next year we're going to be working on stocking the lake at Willow State Park. When they refilled it, there was no fish in there, so we're going to help pay for some of those fish. And we also worked with St. Croix County Water Network, which is implementing civic governance, and that's an ongoing activity. One of the areas of work that we do approach is education and outreach, and I have that divided up into youth and adults. This last year, this was one area that was impacted by COVID. Pretty much all programs across the state that education related took a big hit this last year. You can see in yellow the canceled events were quite significant. Normally there'd be more field days and more people getting involved, but this year we had large events like the Wisconsin Envirothon were canceled. So to offset that, we had staff that worked, actually it was a contracted person, Alicia. She worked to create virtual programs, and she had never done that before, so she did 9 of those that were in great demand, and so she was able to stay busy doing that. We were able to continue a lot with several programs like the speaker and poster contest. We did those online, where we judged them online, and that was interesting. And then there was a St. Patrick's had a stream event that was also online, and the career fair went on as planned, and that was online, as well as the youth summit, which normally would be a big raucous event with 360 kids, but this was an online event. So I'm a little on the fence about the online materials with regard to education. I'm glad we were able to do a lot online, and we really had to scramble to make sure we had the computer resources and all the cameras and learn how to do it and everything, and I'm glad we did it all. But I'm looking forward to doing more in person with regard to the education outreach this coming year. For the adults, there was also a lot of canceled events during this last year. We did get everything else done pretty much. We got our newsletters out there that we do. We did do a few speaking engagements online, created some videos. We did launch that county internal recycling campaign this last year, and all these events at the bottom, the county fair, the Farm City Days, summer tours, those are hallmarks of our division. We participate in those often, and they're important, and they were all canceled. So we're looking forward to some normalcy this year. this in 21 and 22 going forward. The other thing that we do as a division is we kind of engage in leadership activities. That can be as simple as when we talked at the committee here about trying to get DNR to do a better job. And I don't know if we improved it, but they answer my phones right away now. And before it would kind of sit there for a week. But it seemed to be, they know that we were upset with the lack of response to complaints. And so I think we were heard in that particular regard. We developed that spill response plan and passed it through the committee. A lot of back and forth, a lot of questions by the committee. That was an important happening, I believe, from the division this last year. And those are also being used, those same protocols are being used for other types of complaints. So it kind of made it more consistent, and other people have asked me to send them copies of it. So somebody's going to copy it. We also streamlined the municipal recycling support that we provide to the municipalities. We have a checklist that we are requiring municipalities to follow with regard to what they have on their website, the kinds of messages that they deliver to their residents. And that's all intended to get the most bang for our buck so that we get higher recycling rates in the county, which is really the goal of the whole program. We were able to maintain our staff levels through COVID. That is not the case in some counties. A lot of counties did not utilize their soil and water resource funding that they got in 2020. They had to carry forward large blocks of that. We were able to stay busy, and we utilized extensive online training. I think we did collectively as a group, we did over 100 online trainings during the year. So we're looking forward to doing some in-person training this year because we do gain a lot from that. We also obtained that large grant at the Willow River, focused on Willow River protection and improvement, and we just finished hiring someone for that to take on that leadership role as a technician in that project. So those are some good happenings in 2020. So we had some pollution results associated with that. We reduced phosphorus, nitrogen, and sediment, and we have to turn that. Those are the results the state's very interested in. That's why we get the money. So we were able to do that. And since I was confined to a lot of desk duty and not as much face time as myself, I took on a project that I want to report on that I believe is going to help out the county as well as the division. And that is, I created a conservation database that basically goes back 20 years. I could have gone back further. I had records, but the data that I was finding further back wasn't easy to interpret. And so I cut it off at 20 years. Basically, I hauled all the files home and looked through them and entered every project that we did into a database. I did this for a couple of reasons. One was to establish a tracking system that we'd use going forward, and I'll show you what we can do with that. Also, now I'm able to check if someone wants to do a project and we think, wasn't there one there before? I can check it now because I have an easy to check database. Also, I can determine project distribution within watersheds and towns. So maybe a town thinks we don't do any projects for them, or we're avoiding them, or whatever. People say things, and now I have data. So that's going to be a valuable tool. As management, as a committee, you can basically answer those kinds of questions by contacting me, and I can generate the information. Also, we can look at the sources of funding that we've used in the past, and some of those sources have gone away. So what are we going to do now? And so I was able to analyze that, and I have a full report on this. Ellen and I haven't been able to go through it, so she wanted me just to give you a couple of pieces of data, but her and I will get through that someday, and we'll be able to hand it out to you. Some of the most common practices that we cost shared well decommissions, 168 of those. We put in 130 grass waterways throughout the county. In the report, I figured out the total linear feet and all those kind of good things. We cost shared 100 nutrient management plans in the county, and that's how we got our total up to that 45,000 acres. By providing those incentives over the years is how we got people involved to do it. And then once they're involved in it, then they stay in it. We did 69 cover crop contracts and 33 residue management contracts. Those are the top 5 practices that we did over the last 20 years. We utilized these funding sources. We put out about $2 million in cost share. And where'd that money come from? Well, most of the money came from state agency. DADCAP funding, we get an allocation every year. If you don't use your money, you get less next year. It's pretty brutal. And you can give it to somebody else. If they use it, then it doesn't count against you. But we've been able to utilize our funding. The couple of years that I've been here, we've had no trouble getting our money used. I saw a table from other counties, and there's just huge amounts of money because they didn't have the staff on board because of COVID. They didn't use any of their money. So they're carrying all that money forward to this year, and they've got this year's allocation to spend. So they're going to get into some trouble, I believe, and spending their money. So we were always able to do that. DNR Priority Watershed was a very important program that was number 2 over the last 20 years. That program does not exist anymore. That number is not going to change. If we come in here in 2 years, I give another summary or whatever, that number goes away. I mean, it's just going to stay the same. The county just started utilizing fund balance, small amounts to do strategic projects that we thought were important that we weren't going to be able to do. That's already added up to 143,000 in funding, and that's very critical because now it's basically sitting at number 3 as far as the funding source. DNR Targeted Runoff Management is a fund that is largely meant to, it's a competitive grant basis program, and we have just got that large grant. So this funding source, the DNR Targeted Runoff Management, will become more important, and it'll start to move up through the ranks. And so in order to get those grants, we have to, it's a competitive grant process. So we're going to have to always be keen on getting those grants submitted and on a competitive basis. And then all the other funding sources, we utilize a whole bunch. All the last 7 of them only added up to 114,000 over 20 years. Very minor. So we have to do a good job on these top few because that's what's going to do most of the good. Where did we implement the projects? So that was all part of the database. Most of the projects that we did were in the upper Willow River watershed. The most money that was spent was in the Kinnickinnic River. So that, I'll have maps of this to show. That was our number 1 focus by far for the amount of money and the amount of money spent per 1,000 acres or whatever one of statistic you want to come up with. The Kinnickinnic River is a treasure for the county, and we can show that we've put our money where our mouth is on that one. I'm hoping to, obviously all this money we just got allocated to work in the Willow is going to up the Willow to improve it over the next 3 to 5 years. Rush River is 3rd, and then some of these other watersheds aren't all located totally in the county. Remember, they cross the county boundaries, so that's why the amounts go down as you go down in the list. The lower Willow is fairly low because agriculture is less dominant in that particular area. We've done a lot of work there, but it's primarily been through land use activity, stormwater retention, We don't pay for that, but we require it as a condition, those sorts of things. So we've done a lot of work in the Lower Willow, but from a resource management division side, we haven't spent as much money there. There's room to do more. And then on down the list. And some of these at the bottom are very minor portions of our county. The total amount of project expenditures is higher than the cost share because I assumed about a 30% cost share is by the landowner. So the actual cost of the total project is more than just the cost share money that we spent. So that's 656 projects. That said, I will say that I did find several very active programs that I did not put in the database because there was no record of how much was spent and where the projects were. It turned out that those projects we were working as a technical resource for lake associations, and they did projects, but we never had good records of we spent $3,000 on this person on this lake. And if I find that data, I can put it in. So I know of several projects on Pine Lake and some of the Perch Lake, some of these others that I know would fit into this database. If I find good data, I can put it in there. It's kind of a visual. I divided the two maps, one of permanent practices. So permanent practices would be like grass waterways and manure storage removals and those sorts of things. So you can see the watersheds. Here's the Kinnick with large amounts of projects that were done in the Kinnick River watershed, the Rush, and then the Willow, Upper Willow, and then the Lower Willow. These are the management practices, the nutrient management plans, I put well removals in there, well decommissions, because basically once they're done, you never know it was there. Can't see it when you drive by. And so you can kind of see the distribution of work that we've had. I'm making a larger scale, one of these that has both practices types on one map, and we'll put those in the office and show people will see that and be able to see the kind of work that we've done. I also intend to add, and just didn't pull it off for this timeline because I wanted to wrap this up, because these things just keep going. And I would like to put in all the stormwater features that we've required to be put in. And what that will do is that will flood this area with large numbers of features. What that would do is it would show, at least the public, that we have been active. Because there's no denying how much work it takes to do these subdivisions and oversight and review and oh my goodness. So that would populate this side of the county to a large degree. So that was a little side project that I got to do this year because of COVID. Don't think I would have even thought of it if I hadn't had that. So, but it's going to be a useful tool going forward. And what I do now is I require all the information that's necessary to put into the database. I won't give out a cost share number until I have all that data. So staff always would come in like, I need a cost share contract, and I'm like, no way, you're going to fill out this cover sheet, because I had to hunt down a lot of data for all those contracts. It's just, people tried to get the information in there, but it's just hard to require it. So now that I can require it up front, I'm doing that, and when they give me all the information, I give them a cost share number, and then the project can go forward. But I'm gathering all this data up front, and I hope to kind of institutionalize that approach so that I'm like, this is what we're buying with the money. I can't give you a number until we are assured we're going to have something that we can count on. So, any questions?
Well, I just have a quick question. Do you know if Farm City Days is going to happen this year?
I have heard both things, but my inside is just listening over the tops of cubicles. So nobody's come to me and said anything. I heard that it was going to happen, and then I overheard somebody talking, saying they didn't think extension was going to be involved, and then they didn't think it was going to happen. And I don't know either way.
Any other questions? I've got one.
Yeah.
I have two. We had a lot of BMPs, right? That's what we call them? Installed a lot, but did we have any that the farmers removed? Did you keep track of that?
There is a schedule where they have to keep it in for a certain amount of time, but there isn't, to my knowledge, there isn't a process to, keep track of that, unless we have some sort of a schedule, like a spot check. One thing that maybe helped with that is that there was a thing that we use, you'll see it in the annual report, it's called a transect survey. And that is a process where we try to survey, I think, a little over 1,000 fields every year. The state used to give us money for that because they were really interested in the data. And they, it's like so many things, they said, well, you guys keep doing it if you want. And thank God we kept doing it because it does give us measurements of what you're talking about. The transect survey shows that there's a increase in no-till over the years. It took a long time to get where we're at. It could really be used more, but we've gotten it up into the 20% range. And we'd like to get it, another couple, every 5-10% we can get is a great asset for erosion control. And that really decreases the need for some of the BMPs. Like, you don't need sediment ponds if you're in no-till, very seldom do you need it. And so we're tracking some things that will tell us, some things of long-term like that, but I don't have each BMP. We don't near the staff to go out and look at everyone. Yeah.
And then my last one is, do you have any idea why the priority watershed grant was discontinued?
No, it's not a grant. This is a whole program. I did read up on that. It was just a decision at the state to rework how they do it. Yeah. There's actually some explanation on their website. I did find it. I thought it was a great program, because what happened there is they would give you multi-year funding, and as long as you finished a plan, and I think their whole idea there was to get plans all around the state. For whatever reason, maybe it was more intensive than they intended, but they kind of dropped that. They still have the ability to do it in statute, I think, but they have not funded that program. Okay. So they went to this targeted runoff management instead.
So the funds did go someplace else within DNR? Is it
for the most part? Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so.
So no reason to call
the
the legislature.
But that's an intensive roller coaster ride when you get 500,000 and then when you get to the end of it, you got nothing. What happens is you tend to lose staff when they see that grant is going to end. What if we don't get another one? The priority watershed gave you like 5 years to implement the plan. And so people knew they had some stability there. So it was good for that. But so many things have gone that route where you can't count on 5 years or, very few things you can.
We really appreciate your report. It was excellent. Thanks for the time you put into it.
Well, thanks for listening.
Oh, I'm sorry. Scott has a question.
Yeah.
This is just a question in regards to, so as the western third to half of the county continues to develop, do we have any, do we try to educate, or how do we approach people that are developing along the watershed areas on, as this becomes populated with residential growth, and how are we protecting, or, a lot of the new developments, of course, were requiring the setbacks and the different things that have to go into it, but is there anything that's been out there, or how do you handle existing and education and those types of things?
I think it's each project is taken on, and I think by staff, and they put the recommendations in there to try to not have those impacts, and they require stormwater and those kinds of things. But it does not get you out of the problem of conflicts. And we saw what happens, you know. We're kind of on a path now where we have quite a bit of development, you know, out in ag areas. And so, you know, it used to be kind of a conflict between ag and the rural developments, and there still is. But if there's anything more than that, you know, we saw it with the digester, we saw it with some of these other proposals. There's just so many more people. Now, density is quite, there's a lot of people impacted within a 2-mile radius, you know, there, or a mile even. So, yeah, we have a unique challenge with the rural population being, you know, fairly high. So that all these applications are going to be challenging, in my opinion. But we don't have anything special planned for that. One thing we are doing in the Lake Malu area and along the Willow, we are working with the Lake Association to go out to visit farms, and we're taking farmers and taking them to the Lake Association to try to show the two groups working on that kind of interaction. Because the Lake Association's blaming the farmers, and farmers are saying it's all the septic guys down in there. So we're taking a stab at that. So we are working on that, and we have already done one online kind of thing, and now we're going to do some actual tours this summer where we do, like I said, we take some farmers down and boat them around the lake, and take some lake shore owners and take them out to some farms that are doing some good practices. So, trying to educate on that front. Yeah.
And one other question. Have you worked at all with the Lake Association on Cedar Lake with their alum treatments and stuff? And are you aware of where they're at with that?
Yeah, I'm aware of it, but I'm not working with them at all. I don't know where they're at right now. I know that they did some, but for those that don't know, the alum treatment is basically a way to sequester that phosphorus that's in the muck at the bottom. So you put this alum in, and it essentially coats it, so it can't release that phosphorus out of the muck. So if you have a tremendous amount of phosphorus in the muck, it'll just sit there and release. It doesn't matter how many practices you put on the ground, you're going to have a lot of problems. So it's a way to milk of magnesia for pollution. That would be that nails it right there. Yeah. It's a Band-Aid.
Well, I thanked you a moment ago. I'm not going to repeat that, but thank you. The next up is announcements and correspondence. I will announce that for various reasons, the idea of having our meeting out at the farm has been changed. We're not going to do that for various reasons. We're going to have our next meeting right here. We changed the plan. Didn't happen. Sorry. Any other announcements and correspondence? Oh, I miss Alan. All right. Request for future agenda items. Scott.
This will be a hard one because it's been talking back and forth on some of this, but one of the things that I've been getting a lot of feedback from a lot of the towns is how we work to on enforcement issues amongst the ordinances. I hear a lot of real positive feedback for the community development regarding new businesses and people that want to cooperate and want to work with them. They're all over trying to fix everything and work it out in a positive sense, which is awesome. But on the town side of it, and what the biggest feedback has been to me is that, you know, we've got things that have been violations that are going on over 10 years, and we don't know where to go with this because they have complaints coming into the townships. They don't come to the county board meetings. They always vent to the town board, and then the town board sometimes does and sometimes is not communicated back with a
Okay, so
community
that's a
development.
request for the, yeah, I'm letting you roll, and actually, by way of request, we got your idea,
Yeah.
and we will, if Ellen has any questions on that, we'll have her give you a call. I'm so interested in what you're saying, I probably should have cut you off 5 minutes ago. Any other requests for future agenda items? Sean?
Township of St. Joe is going to be curbing one of their neighborhoods that's in the riverway. So they will need a some type of variance or something from the watershed. They're going to be installing curbs for, mainly help manage runoff, one of like their residential neighborhoods.
We are aware of it and have been involved in that process with St. Joe. No, if it's a variance or something, that's going to go through the Board of Adjustment from the variance for the Riverway. But
Staff's on it, and if it needs to come to committee, it will.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Sean. Any other requests for future agenda items? Scott?
That don't help. Thanks. Last one is on when we're, one of the other things that we just want to discuss and talk about is inner or departmental, when we're trying to do enforcement and one department's doing one thing and then there's a conflict between what's happening there and what's happening. Is there anything we can consider or look at for policy changes that will change this up a little bit so that we can be consistent? This is just a quick example, but the situation with issuing out permits to Cedar Lake Speedway for event camping across the road, and then Cedar Lake Speedway uses that as a tool to not have to get their zoning approved.
Cook this down quick. Are you talking about the temporary camping permit and that being used then as an impediment to enforce zoning? Okay, we're going to ask Scott Cox to give us an explanation of that probably and see if that can get on our agenda. Thank you. Any other requests for future agenda items? Very good. That being said, the date of the next meeting is Thursday,